News channel.
He's the king of breakfast TV, and he's back.
Eamon Holmes, back on the TV
Surprised
with me this morning.
Even remember my name.
I know, it's been 4 months. You have holy water by your bed?
Oh, yes.
Oh, good.
Already to bless.
Yeah. Oh, Eamon. Oh.
Why do you not believe anything I say?
Eamon Holmes back on GB News Breakfast at 6 a.m.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Good evening. This is the latest from the GB Newsroom. Lancashire police are working to find a body that was recovered from the River Wyre. It was located in the area where mother of two, Nicola, disappeared more than 3 weeks ago. They're currently treating the death as unexplained and say her family has been informed of the latest development. The Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, has described the news as heartbreaking and distressing. Former Detective Chief Inspector Mike Neville says the post-mortem examination might not give us information about what happened.
There'll be a formal identification. The body's obviously, if it is Nicola, has been in the river a long, nearly 3 weeks, or best more than 3 weeks. So whether the post-mortem can ever tell us whether she entered deliberately or by accident, perhaps we'll never know. There's been too much speculation in this case, of course. We've had all sorts of ghouls going down there and causing even more hurt for the family. So the sooner the police can get the post-mortem and the identification done, I'm sure they'll be keen to get that information out there.
The Prime Minister has rejected calls by senior Conservative MPs to scrap a planned rise in corporation tax. Rishi Sunak is set to introduce a new policy hiking the tax from 19% to 25% in April. But several Tory backbenchers are encouraging Mr Sunak to abandon the increase as part of the March budget, saying it would be a blow to levelling up hopes. However, a government spokesperson says it's vital to stick to it in order to halve inflation this year and reduce debt. Sir Keir Starmer says under no circumstances will Labour do a deal with the SNP. Addressing a party conference in Edinburgh, he urged Scottish voters to put their faith in Labour in the wake of Nicola Sturgeon's resignation. Sir Keir says he can bring change to Scotland and the tide is turning on the Tories and the SNP. The movie All Quiet on the Western Front took the BAFTAs by storm this evening, taking home 7 awards. And with that, it broke the BAFTAs record for the most awards won by a film not in English. While Elvis star Austin Butler won the BAFTA for the Best Leading Actor, beating Colin Farrell, who'd been the favourite to take the prize. And the Banshees of Inisherin were among the other big winners this evening, winning the award for Outstanding British Film. TV, online and DAB plus radio. This is GB News. Now it's over to headliners.
Hello, I'm Andrew Doyle and welcome to Headliners. Joining me tonight to take you through Monday's top news stories are 2 top comedians, in inverted commas, Josh Howie and Francis Foster. How are you both?
I'm a bit worried I got poisoned by the chocolates that you were given as a gift and then you let me eat them.
Well, you are my taster, Josh.
I know, and now I'm feeling a bit weird.
Josh, you're absolutely fine. You look lovely. You've made an effort with the jacket. I appreciate you being here.
OK, well, let's see if I make it to the end of the show.
And how are you, Francis? You okay?
I'm very well. I'm just very interested in Josh's progress and to see if he dies by the end of Headlines.
OK, well, stick around to find out. But before we begin, let's have a quick gander at Monday's front pages and the Daily Mail. Now, they are running with Body Found Less Than a Mile from Where She Vanished. This is the story of Nicola Bulley, and this will be dominating most of the front covers, of course. The Telegraph has Body Found in search for missing Nicola. The Guardian leading with Top Scientists issue stark warning on shattered healthcare workers. The Times running with the Nicola Bulley story, Body Found a Mile from Where Bulley Vanished. And The Mirror, Family's Worst Fear, Walkers spot woman in river mile from where she vanished. And The Daily Star, they're running with Brum's Rush. There's gold, apparently, in Birmingham for those who want to go and dig it up. Fascinating stuff. Those were your front pages. OK, we're going to kick off with the story dominating all of the front pages. Josh, this is the Metro.
Yeah, so Nicola body is found, but they've used some punctuation here in a slightly sly way. Nicola, semicolon. So it sort of reads like Nicola's body is found.
It's a bit misleading, isn't it? And we should emphasise that they don't know the identity of this body.
They're just going,
yet.
Nicola, body is found.
Yeah,
so that's a little bit dodgy there. And then they also go, family comforted after discovery in river. Really? They're going to be comforted? Is that the right word?
It's odd. It's odd way of reporting on this, isn't it? You know, it's,
yeah.
But
so it was found a mile away.
Yes.
And
we shouldn't jump to conclusions.
No, we shouldn't jump to. But regardless, that they found that a couple walking found this body, saw this in the river, in the reeds. You're wondering, they've been looking for for 3 weeks now. What have the police been doing?
OK, well, that's an interesting question. I mean, Francis, it's such a horrible story. It's so tragic. I mean, that does raise an interesting point. Maybe the body gets washed further downstream or something like that. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, absolutely. The reality is that the police have not emerged with any great credit from this case. There was disclosing of the fact that Nicola had issues with alcohol. She was on HRT treatments. I don't really see what was relevant about this.
Well, they haven't made it clear why that information should be, conveyed to the public. And if they were going to do so, they should explain their reasons, shouldn't they?
Absolutely.
Because a lot of people have been critical of that.
Absolutely. And what it has actually looked at, even from people on the right, is that what the police have been doing is a certain amount of victim shaming and blaming her by saying, she had, alcohol problems, etc., etc., etc. The reality is the police should have done their jobs better. They should have conducted a more thorough search, and we really should have discovered the whereabouts of Nicola already.
Yeah, absolutely horrible story. Anyway, we're going to move on to the front of the Telegraph. What are the Telegraph running? I mean, they're also mentioning they've also covered the Nicola Bulley story, but they have other stories as well which we could talk about here. Absolutely.
So this is a Northern Ireland story, a Northern Ireland Brexit story.
Yippee! Yeah,
exactly. Brexit is a gift that keeps... It's back and it's better than ever. Rishi Sunak has been forced to pause the protocol deal amid backlash from senior Tories and the DUP.
Right. This was always a risk, wasn't it? With the DUP's red line. It was always a risk.
Well, this is it. It was always a risk. As you will know, being Northern Irish yourself, Andrew, doing any form of deal in Northern Ireland is incredibly difficult when you have to appeal to both sides of
almost impossible.
The political spectrum.
This is why Stormont keeps collapsing. This is why we had it between 2017 and 2020 with Sinn Féin not refusing to participate. You have a system where the First Minister and the Deputy First Minister have the same power. They have the same weight. You need both parties on board. That's the whole point of power sharing. And when it collapses, they need to sort it out. I mean, there is a history of breaking deadlocks in Northern Ireland, but this looks like an interminable deadlock.
Well, we'll see, but the interesting thing, Starmer's done quite a clever thing, because he said Labour will give Sunak his support.
Yes.
And he's saying, look, this is bigger than parties, this is about what's best for the country as a whole.
Yeah.
And let's not play party politics with this and stop sort of kowtowing to your more extreme Brexiteer base.
Yes.
Let's get this done so we can start making Brexit work. But either way, politically, it's a clever thing for Starmer to do.
I mean, I wonder. I mean, I don't know if it is about hardline Brexiteers. I think it is about and sort of inability to understand the strength of feeling in Northern Ireland against the protocol, and an inability to sort of grapple with the kind of constitutional threat, the kind of existential threat that a lot of unionists feel. I mean, I was in Belfast quite recently, and it's interesting.
Humble brag.
No, I've got family in Northern Ireland. I go there all the time. I was in there. I was looking around some of the areas, some of the unionist areas, or loyalist areas rather, where they have the graffiti and they have the murals. And all of a sudden, you're seeing a lot of no to the no border down the Irish Sea. That kind of thing is replacing the old slogans of no surrender. And it's the strength of feeling. I can't emphasise it enough.
But that's quite good. I mean, I'm sorry, but I quite like the fact that but that's better than people with guns.
It is better than people with guns.
When they're sort of writing about sort of slogans, the ECG shouldn't be anywhere near us or whatever.
Although I have seen some graffiti with guns and no border down the Irish Sea as well. Okay. So I think you can combine the two.
I'm just saying maybe we're moving in a good graffiti direction.
I think that should be our main concern, is the tenor of the graffiti. But hopefully we'll get past these red lines. I think that's very important that they do, and hopefully they can resolve something at some point. Anyway, we're going to move on to the front cover now of The Guardian. They are covering a different story as well, aren't they?
Yes, top scientists issues stark warning on shattered healthcare workers. So this is...
Nurses are knackered, basically.
Basically, no, and it's not just the UK, it's all around the world. Obviously, there was this thing a couple of years ago called COVID.
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Tell us about
what
that.
happened?
Yeah.
Well, it was a big hoo-ha. I don't know. All I remember is I had to homeschool my kids for a couple of years. And now they're not very clever.
All about you, isn't it, Josh?
Well, there was no one else to talk to during that time. But basically, and certainly in the UK, where we haven't necessarily been investing, certainly long-term within our health system and with the doctors and with the staff, and now obviously everyone's going on strikes, we're seeing the fruits of this bad policy making over years.
Yeah, I mean, they do need more support, don't they, these frontline workers?
More clapping.
I mean, do you think they're knackered because of all the dancing on TikTok?
It could be a lot of that.
It could be a lot of that, because those moves, they are exhausting, some of them, you know?
Good moves.
Takes a lot of rehearsal.
Good fitness.
What do you think about this, Francis?
I think, look, it's been a 2-year of a pandemic in which these health professionals were at the coalface. They saw some of the most awful sites. I had people messaging me on Twitter explaining what was going on in hospitals, and I think there is just a general fatigue when you've been put through that for 2 years, working, seeing people literally dying in front of you at a rate that you hadn't seen before in your career. It's not surprising to me that a lot of them are wanting to leave the profession or wanting a sabbatical or demanding more pay.
Well, yeah, because they are underpaid as well.
Yeah.
This is the truth of it. Anyway.
Thanks for bumming us out there.
Yeah.
Well, you should have been at my gig tonight.
Well,
Foster delivered some truth bombs.
Oh dear.
Hopefully, Francis will be able to cover some lighter stories after the break, but those were the front pages. Do join us, though, after the break. We're going to be diving into the big stories of tomorrow. China, US tensions, Macron's declining popularity, and Asbos. Classic comedy topic. See you there.
Yes.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel. Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Click that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners, your first look at Monday's newspapers with me, Andrew Doyle, and also Josh Howie and Francis Foster. Monday's Express now. How close are we to World War III, Josh?
Well, before we get to that, I just want to give an update on the chocolate poisoning. I'm feeling a bit gassy.
OK.
So I don't know if that's a sign, if anybody knows out there, if that's a sign of poisoning, if you could tweet us or send some sort of message. And anyway,
You're genuinely worried about this, huh?
I'm a little bit...
Not as worried as me, mate, because I'm sitting next to you.
Yeah.
Well, I'm doing my best to hold it in. Anyway, let's...
Lovely.
Thanks,
Let's get on with the story.
Anyway, but let's talk about World War III. Let's talk about the world ending. US warns of serious consequences as China poised to send the weapons into Ukraine. So are things spreading to essentially become a proxy world war? We obviously have Iran supplying Russia with the drones that have been attacking the Ukraine's infrastructure. Now China has been supporting Russia in non-lethal means. I don't know what that means, like noodles, maybe?
Yeah, something like that. But they've been very tentative
rice.
from the start, haven't they? You know, they've been sort of...
Is that racist for me to say that? I don't know.
Basically.
OK.
Yeah.
But they didn't say, for instance, they didn't condemn them outright after the invasion.
No, they said we're best buddies.
Yeah,
we got your back.
It does look dodgy, doesn't it?
Yeah, so the potential now for them, because I think there's no doubt that Russia has been impacted. I mean, they're still able to get their nice cars and their expensive handbags and whatnot in Russia at the moment. But whether weapons and bits of equipment, and that's now starting to be affected.
We've had a lot of sanctions from the West. You know, they can't get Viagra anymore. They can't get toilet seats. They can't get McDonald's, I think. Various things like this.
Their Saturday night is ruined.
But they are getting weapons from China, so I don't suppose...
Are they? That's the thing. And now America's basically put a warning, because obviously America and Russia...
Yes.
America and China have got a big thing going. They've got big balloons issues, got a big balloon...
There's a lot of balloons going on.
A lot of balloons going on.
Are you worried about this, Francis? I mean, do you think, you know, we're on the cusp of a global conflict?
I don't think we're on the cusp of a global conflict, but
I say cusp as well. I feel left out.
Yeah.
Why, what's wrong with cusp?
No, you just said it in such a sort of alliterative way. The cusp.
You're making me sound like a big camp theatrical,
bit of gas coming up there.
Go on.
Anyway, I think what it really does show is we always saw China as an ally. We always saw them as they would make our things, our products for cheap. We would then import them, and it would be very hunky-dory. And what this has actually shown, and it has exposed, is the fact that China are not our allies. They do not want to work with us. They have other priorities, and the West needs to wake up to that.
Sure. OK, well, we're going to move now to a potential breakthrough on Alzheimer's. This is in Monday's Guardian. Francis.
Yes, its research into the disease has focused on plaques in the brain. Some scientists think viruses and bacteria play a role in this. So there's been a lot of research done by many neurologists at the Columbia University, and they have actually, a lot of them have actually said that you can link Alzheimer's to the herpes simplex virus, which is a pathogen which is actually found in 70% of the population. And what a lot of these neuroscientists think is that you get infected with the herpes simplex virus, and essentially your brain is inflamed. And once it reaches a certain level of inflammation, that is when you start to develop Alzheimer's-like symptoms.
And what are they saying? Is this form of herpes like cold sores, that kind of thing?
Exactly. And so, but this is the interesting thing. There was a 2018 study in Taiwan which says that when people with herpes were treated with a standard antiviral drug, it would decrease their risk of contracting dementia or developing dementia ninefold.
That's significant. That's not shabby, is it? That's a big deal. So I mean, they asked. Well, we always get these stories every now and then about we're closer to finding a cure for Alzheimer's. This looks like actually it is quite a breakthrough.
I mean, we could well be on the cusp of it.
You just want to say the word cusp.
I didn't want to say it. But it is. I mean, look, it costs $34.7 billion a year dealing with the effects of dementia. More than 1 million people in the UK living with it. And it seems to be a sort of chicken and the egg situation here, where what they thought was the cause of it actually might have been the body defending itself.
Right.
Yeah. So this is really interesting.
And it is a horrible disease. So
I'm definitely getting it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I've snogged a lot of people.
There we go. Always want to hear about Josh's love. All right, who better to discuss this next one from Monday's Telegraph than Josh Harry? You're an expert on this, aren't you?
I am indeed. Welsh Government omits women from period poverty plan announcement. Periods are things that women get.
Interesting.
It's the menstrual cycle thing. I believe it happens once every 4 days. And
do you know what you remind me of at this point? You remind me of a science teacher covering a maths teacher covering a science lesson, or the art teacher.
4 days? I don't know. It feels like 4 days in my life. Hi, Mrs. Anyway, the point is that they have put this. They want to achieve period dignity in Wales. The Social Justice Minister, Jane Hutt, did a statement and didn't mention women.
OK, but women are, I would say, relevant to the menstrual cycle.
You think so?
I think there's a connection there.
Heathen.
I think there's something going on there.
Yeah.
Francis, women are getting sick of this because, you know, we often see, we often hear about the word woman being replaced with people who bleed, menstruators, people with vulvas, etc.
Egg layers.
Egg layers, egg bearers. But we don't hear this with men. I mean, I was trying to replace the word men with prostate haver or, you know, people with testes. And so it does feel like a targeted anti-woman campaign, doesn't
Absolutely. And this is what people don't really understand when it comes to gender ideology, is that it is about erasing women. It's about saying that anyone can be a woman. And if anyone can be a woman, then actually women, the definition of woman doesn't exist.
Right.
And once that happens, you start to get into very, very, very dangerous territory. With things like this, you can say, oh, what does it matter? But when it comes to erasing women's-only spaces, such as prisons, hospitals, dressing rooms, changing rooms, sports, that's when it gets very dangerous for women.
You know, we've seen, obviously, the SNP, I mean, Nicola Sturgeon has collapsed as a result of her stupid commitment to fealty to gender ideology. We're seeing it in Wales as well. They're actually thinking of following suit, the Welsh Government.
How are they not learning from other people's mistakes? That just shows how captured they are, how much part of this bubble that they are. And you're seeing they also want to introduce things like non-binary passports. This is like mental.
Yeah, OK, we're going to move on now to Monday's Telegraph again. What about this one, Francis? You've got this?
So, yes, complimenting women cannot be an excuse for street harassment, says MPs. And this is because men who harass women in the streets or they make lewd comments to them, one of the get-out-of-jail-free cards that they can use is, oh, I was just paying her a compliment, I was just being friendly, and actually the reality is she couldn't take a joke, etc., etc., etc. So what the government are trying to do is they're trying to crack down on this because if they're found guilty of street harassment, offenders can face up to a maximum of 2 years in jail. And also, they're very problematic, Andrew, because they know what a woman is, and we can't have that.
Can't have that. I mean, look, you and I have both been teachers, so we know that sometimes when bullies do their thing, their get-out is often, it was only a joke.
Yes.
That's something that is pretty standard. But this is there can be problems with this kind of thing, though. Sometimes innocuous things, genuinely innocuous things, get wrapped up with serious assault.
Yes, there absolutely can be a problem with this bill. At the same time, there is a massive problem of women being shouted at, followed, stalked, wolf whistle, and we've seen that this stuff escalates, and that's the problem. Is where you had like Wayne Couzens, and he was done this week for indecent exposure, and then a few days after that incident, he then went and murdered and raped and kidnapped somebody. So the point is, we are living in a culture where somehow men are some men are not being taught how to treat women.
So this is about socialisation.
Absolutely. And I think that rather than this bill, which hopefully will help deal with the situation, the real issue is let's get into schools where you guys used to work, teach the boys who somehow are growing up in households where they're not being taught to respect other human beings, and particularly women, and that hopefully then that issue would be dealt with in the next 10, 15 years as they become adults.
Because it's not dealt with particularly well by putting, creating a sort of hyper-reaction later down the line. For instance, when we had the Me Too movement and you had that dossier from Parliament talking about the various transgressions, sexual transgressions, but it had things like sexual assault wrapped up with touching someone's knee lightly, and that makes a laughingstock of the whole movement. So similarly, that would be my concern here, and I think you're right, probably get in early and socialise kids better.
But it's also as well, and look, we have to accept this, so there's always going to be a small minority of deeply unpleasant, awful men who are going to commit unspeakable and violent acts against women.
Yeah.
And the reality is, and I think Josh's point is particularly salient, we need to get in early with those types of men in order to make sure, like in the case of Wayne Couzens, they do not escalate their awful behaviour.
Yeah. OK, well, troubling statistics now from Monday's Guardian. Josh, what's this about?
Black people are 7 times more likely to die after police restraint in Britain, figures show. So this is a report that's coming out Monday called I Can't Breathe, which is a reference to what happened in America, race, death and British policing. So what they've done is, because this, unbelievably, no one seems to have collated these figures before properly, or the government certainly said there hasn't been an incident of proportionality in terms of black people being arrested, dying. But actually, when they figure in it turns out some of these high-profile cases actually weren't being included in the data. So now they have included.
The Home Office did say that they had looked into the data on this, but they weren't including, for instance, when someone wasn't necessarily under arrest at the time.
Exactly. So actually, when they do factor in the data and they look at the over the last 10 years or so, 23 of the 119 deaths that have taken place in custody with restraint were black people, and that means that they're 6.4 times more likely to die when they are restrained.
OK, Francis, any thoughts on this one?
Well,
come on, Francis.
The reality is these are awful statistics, and at a time where faith in every police force has taken a real battering, particularly with Wayne Couzens, particularly with other instances. This is the last thing the police force needs. There needs to be an investigation, and if black people, as a result, are 7 times more likely to die, we need to find out the reasons why.
OK, what about another story now? This is on antisocial behaviour. Super Asbos. Josh, what's this about?
Yeah, so this is Labour's going to reintroduce tougher Asbos with powers to make arrests. We're actually finally seeing some Labour policy. Supposedly later on this week, there's going to be these 5 pledges that Starmer's going to come out with. But obviously one of these things is they're doing something called respect orders, which because the problem with Asbos, which were replaced about 8 years ago, is by antisocial behaviour injunctions, is that they couldn't enforce them. i.e. people weren't going to jail or weren't being arrested.
Weren't they becoming like a badge of honour for some people?
Well, for Asbos, yeah. So now they're going to make these laws, Labour is saying we're going to make these laws a lot stricter, and so that actually put some teeth behind them, because we are seeing a massive increase, 30% increase this year of criminal damage to shops and leisure centres and whatnot, and this has an impact on society, and certainly areas where there is, obviously, less money and what other words I'm trying to remember. I think that chocolate's affecting me.
Yeah, it is, mate.
This is interesting because the Labour Party are not known for being tough on crime, and it seems that they are now trying to
win an election.
Win an election, which they've already got in the bag. Let's be honest. But
well, yes. So the problem is with Labour is you had Jeremy Corbyn, who lurched so far to the left that he abandoned the centre ground. And Keir Starmer, who's actually a very astute politician, realises that the Tories have badly let down the British public on their core principles, particularly including crime and law and order. So what Starmer is very shrewdly trying to do is operate and take that middle ground away from the Conservatives and say, look, under a Labour government, we will be tough on crime, and, in the words of his great hero, tough on the causes of crime.
OK.
But it's actually so really, this is how desperate Tories are now, is that a Tory spokesman said that Labour, they voted specifically against tougher sentences for desecration of war memorials. So if that's the only place that they can go to, because, you know, I'm not saying that that's not a serious incident, but compared to these communities that are really suffering...
Yeah, I think at this point the Tories might as well just accept they're not going to win the next election, so let Labour do it, mess everything up, and then they'll be in a stronger position next time. That would be my strategy.
I mean, that is Labour's strategy at the moment.
Yeah, to be fair. OK, we must take a break now, but please don't go anywhere, because after the break, we've got a disturbing use of AI, why the tide might be turning against woke, and why your doctor is unlikely to be working class. See you in a minute.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online. Across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you know, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Welcome back to Headliners, your first look at Monday's newspapers. Let's get straight back into it with this one from Monday's Telegraph. And is Salman Rushdie worth listening to on literary matters?
Well,
what does he know?
Yeah, what does he know? I mean, he's only, won several, notable awards. I mean, the Satanic Verses, Midnight's Children, who cares? But anyway, he has led criticism of absurd Roald Dahl censorship. And this is publishers collectively losing their mind and changing one of the most brilliant children's authors this country has ever produced. When I was a teacher, if there was ever a child who didn't like reading, you could guarantee that they would love the works of Roald Dahl because it's spiky, it's funny.
And it's really dark. I mean, like, if you think about that scene in The Witches where the child gets trapped in the the painting is very chilling, but children like that. I mean, this idea that they've got to be protected from all of this stuff is nonsense.
No, and they loved it. They took a glee in watching the villains come to a particularly unpleasant fate. I love Dahl. Dahl ignited a passion for reading in me, and he will do for generations. And the fact that they have taken his work and mangled it is, to me, disgraceful.
I think we should probably clarify. I mean, some of the things they're doing, it's not just censorship of things that maybe have dated. They're actually rewriting whole passages.
It's amazing. These aren't living documents.
No.
This is someone has put their work out there. He thought very carefully, like any writer does.
Yeah.
Like the very specifics of their language, and the replacements are terrible and don't flow as well.
There's a weirdness about them as well.
To his writing, and David Baddiel makes a good point that one of the words they took out was like double chin, but then they left because that was going to be offensive to people who are double chin, assuming they're overweight.
Yeah.
But then they left in wonky nose or crooked teeth.
So it's inconsistent as well.
Yeah, well, that's it. So where does it end?
Well, they took out a reference to Rudyard Kipling.
Yeah.
Because he's deemed to be a problematic author now, and they put in who did they put? John Steinbeck instead, who wrote a book called Of Mice and Men, which has been taken off certain school library shelves because of the use of racial epithets within that book. So they're getting themselves in all these sort of knots. What it should be, surely, is that we just leave books alone, and if ethical standards change and things are no longer acceptable, we explain to kids, these were written at a different time where people had different ideas.
No one cares that he was a virulent anti-Semite, by the way.
They do. Lots of people have spoken about
I'm just saying they're not like talking about the people who are changing words. You'd think that maybe the fact that it was written for them in their ideology, well, he was a big old racist.
Have they not used that as the reason behind it at all? Has that not been raised
not at all. But I'm just saying, if they were going to stay with their, let's ban these troublesome writers, well, he was a massive anti-Semite.
Yeah, but it's more... Yes, so exactly. We've had a lot of sort of woke people sort of saying that we need to censor or get rid of authors who have negative views about minority groups. Yeah. But this is more about what the characters within the books are saying.
I'm not saying to ban him. I've got all his books.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping to read them one day.
But have you got the original versions or these new versions?
No,
now, will it be the case, hopefully, that people will not buy these new versions and just get the second-hand ones? I mean, we've seen with Dr. Seuss that the estate of Dr. Seuss actually took those books off the market, so you can't even buy them anymore. I do think there's a case for getting hold of old books and keeping them safe.
Yes, absolutely.
This is an authoritarian movement that will keep changing.
And the problem is that we are mollycoddling children. And then we complain when they grow up into adults and we start saying, they're oversensitive, they can't handle criticism, they don't know how to take part in a debate.
They're stupid.
Yeah, thank you. But it's true.
Yeah.
But the reality is, we're the ones who are causing this in our children by ridiculous instances such as this.
But sorry, I was just going to say, I think these documents will serve as a historical reminder. Like in 100 years' time, they can look at these books and go, these are the changes, and this is how stupid people were 100 years ago. To go along with that.
Well, good on Salman Rushdie for leading the charge on this one. I think he's absolutely right. Anyway, troubling consequences of AI art generators. This is from Monday's Mail, Josh. This is an unpleasant
This is a very unpleasant story. Perverts are using AI software to make indecent images of children. And...
minor attracted people, thank you.
Yeah, according to...
Well, that's the phrase that the woke left use about...
To forgive their...
Anyway, so effectively, because you can make any image on these AI generators, and of course that does lend itself to more
and then not only that, they're also taking real-life pictures of kids, but, adding them to other deep fake stuff. And it's a really horrible article. It's important that this stuff is highlighted, I guess, so we can deal with it. Although, when they're writing about it, it does then say that someone who's in charge of finding these images, the Internet Watch Foundation, said they actually haven't found so far. Their job is to remove these images from the Internet, and they haven't actually found any of them as of yet. But I believe supposedly they do exist.
Quite a traumatic job, that.
It is a very traumatic job. And the thing is, as this person says here, the chief executive, this stuff normalises then other abuse and real life abuse and stuff. So it's a horrible story, but of course this is one of the unintended consequences of technology, and I'm sure when the people were coming up with this is not what they thought it was going to be used for.
We're moving on to Monday's Telegraph now. Let's talk about middle-class parenting. Francis?
Yes, so middle-class parents still want their children to be doctors, and in many cultures, particularly in immigrant cultures, if you have a child who becomes a doctor, that is a sign that your child has made it, that they have become a pillar in the community. And look, quite rightly so, because doctors, they do wonderful, wonderful work. However, the reality is that a lot of them work incredibly long hours. They're underpaid. It's a highly stressful job for obvious reasons. And so the reality is that a lot of people who go into medicine realise this and then think to themselves, well, actually, with my incredible A-levels in the STEM subjects, I could have gone into finance, I could have gone into banking, I could literally be earning quadruple what I'm earning now with a modicum of the stress.
But I mean, it's not all about the money, of course. It's all, you know, something like being a doctor is a vocational thing. You know, you want to help people. It's interesting. This article talks about the jobs that have retained this kind of this sheen of respectability. Law and accountancy being other things. These are aspirational professions. Parents want their kids to become these figures. It seems a little arbitrary.
Well, as it says here, this is stuff that's been going back like 100 years for immigrants. So Jewish people, when they come, it's very much a stereotype of, my son the doctor, or the lawyer, or the accountant. And that also stretches, as it says here, to Asian families as well.
But I'd say even just everyone, like the idea of, my kid's a lawyer, my kid's a doctor. It's a form of boasting, isn't it?
Well, they aren't saying it. What I thought was interesting was they were saying, my son the quantity surveyor. People aren't saying that, whereas actually quantity surveyors earn more and are more needed than architects.
Why aren't they saying comedians? My son, the comedian, I'm so proud. Well, why do they not do that?
Look at comedians, mate. Have you ever seen a comedian and thought, I'd want him to be my child?
You know what my mum said when she came to see my first show?
Go on.
That wasn't 7 minutes.
Wow.
That was her feedback. And she also called my dad and said, because I was living at home at the time, and she said, how am I going to get him out? He's mad. He will never make it.
I do like when you use the show to settle scores with your parents.
Look at me now, eh?
Do you know, when I asked my mum for funding for Edinburgh, my mum is South American, she's Venezuelan, she went, Francie, come with me. She took me round the house and she went, you see this house, huh? This is going to pay for my retirement, not your pathetic ambition to become clown.
That's amazing. That is amazing, and I hope she's not watching the show.
Can I do an impression of your mum as well?
No.
Hello, Francis, I have you.
No, I hate it when you do accents, Josh.
I'm very good at accents.
You make it sound like Bumblebee Man from
Francis,
The Simpsons.
What do you want on your toast, Francis?
Absolutely terrible. Borderline xenophobic. We're moving on. What about this one about cancel culture, Josh? It's a bit more positive, actually.
Yes, students are turning their back on bullying cancel culture. Harvard professor believes. Well, he believes it, so he doesn't have any facts to back it up. But he thinks that we're at the crest of these cancellations, certainly with academia, where you're seeing there has been sort of increasing over the last few years, these people coming to give speeches and whatnot. But he thinks that now, and certainly with places like the UK now pulling in legislation to make sure that free speech is protected within universities.
Well, the government's going to have a free speech czar to make sure that this happens. So we'll see if that works. But I think he might be onto something. I mean, I've given talks on university campuses, and the younger people do seem genuinely interested and want to be challenged. And so the perception we have of this snowflake generation, I think, is very unfair. And I think a lot of them are pushing back on this. I think a lot of them are sick of a few students who get into politics deciding on their behalf what they can and cannot see.
Well, this is always what happens as well. You get one generation who are particularly liberal and, free speech is you should be able to say anything. Then you'll get the next generation who'll be saying, oh, look, but you can't say that. You can't offend this person. You can't. And then there'll be another backlash. It's just how culture works.
It's interesting when Helen Joyce gave a talk at Gonville and Caius College in Cambridge, and some of the students had to sneak them in because they were so afraid of being seen by other students who might cause trouble for them. I mean, that's just not a good situation.
No, it's not a good situation. And certainly in the field of academia, which is about ideas. But I do think the groundswell is changing. And this is slightly tangential, but I do want to bring it in. My 13-year-old son is playing chess. And all his mates are all playing chess. And my nephew, who's like 15, is playing chess. You know why?
Go on.
Andrew Tate is into chess. I mean,
really?
And I'm like, I've told him how the Andrew Tate thing and how he's done and all this stuff. And they've all got obsessed with chess. It's like this weird side effect.
Can you play chess in a misogynistic way? Do you sort of dig at the queen?
You tattoo the chess pieces with your name.
Yeah, I find that very disturbing. Anyway, let's talk about this one, about Emmanuel Macron, who has well, declining popularity, Francis.
Well, indeed. So Emmanuel Macron's popularity is plummeting. It's dropped to its lowest levels in 3 years. But he's been trying to reform the retirement age in France. It is 62, and he wants to raise it to 64. Now, obviously, the French don't like working, as we all know, and they get a bit uppity about it. So there's been lots of strikes. There's been lots of argy-bargy. But the reality is I think France is going through a crisis, a political crisis, very, very similar to the one that we're going through at the moment, where the mainstream parties aren't really representing the average person.
Yes.
They're getting very, very frustrated, and a lot of them are flocking to Marine Le Pen's party, which peddles a more, shall we say, hard right position.
Yes.
And as a result of that, her party is skyrocketing. And you're wondering what's going to happen in the next election if these trends continue.
She's also, edged out Mélenchon, and it's interesting that you get the sort of far left and far right. They are appealing for the same voter base. This is really interesting stuff. And also, French politics is always so unpredictable, actually, what happens. I think Le Pen is tainted by virtue of her surname, actually.
Yes.
I don't think that will... I can't see that, her getting into power.
She needs to get married.
Do you think that's all it is?
She needs to take her husband's name, mate.
But yeah, it is a worry, though, isn't it, Josh?
It is a worry, but this is something that was part of the last election. They know that they have a massive issue here.
Yeah.
They have to put up the retirement age. Like I say, it's going to 62 to 64. In the UK, it's 102.
Yeah.
But is it?
It's going to be.
Emmanuel Macron doesn't really listen to people, though. He doesn't listen to the electorate. He didn't listen to the Gilets jaunes. He doesn't care, really, or doesn't seem to be. He is a technocrat. So I think he is out of touch, right?
Yeah, he is completely out of touch. He is one of those types of politicians, a.k.a. Starmer or Sunak, who are very much spawns of Tony Blair and look up to him. But the reality is you can only ignore your electorate for so long before the inevitable backlash happens, and you can see it bubbling away in France for a very long time.
I think we absolutely can. We've got to go for a contractually mandated break now, so take a few minutes to just decompress. Prepare yourself for the next part of Headliners, where we're going to descend into chaos. We've got a son that has subscribed to his mother's OnlyFans. We have a guide to polyamory and why a squatting position is the most effective method of defecation. OK, come back for this sophisticated stuff in a couple of minutes.
First and foremost, I'm a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion, and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even some ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless, and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
Welcome back to Headliners, your first look at Monday's newspapers. And after reading this one from the Monday Star, I want to ask Oedipus to poke my eyeballs out. This is a Freudian nightmare, Josh.
With what?
Well, he used a brooch, didn't he, in the play?
I remember something else. OK, lad admits subscribing to Mum's OnlyFans, but it's not what you think.
Well,
I
what is it then?
hope not. It is because essentially his mum is not very attractive, and this is his way of giving money to his mum.
Isn't it also that they're struggling financially?
Well, that's it. So he's like secretly got 3 accounts that he subscribes to her. He says he never watches the stuff, allegedly.
So wait, he subscribes to his mother's OnlyFans to make her feel better about herself, but also to give her some money.
To give her some money.
Why not just give her some money?
She says, Francis, thank you so much.
Unbelievable.
Oh, my God. Not only did he say that my mum is on OnlyFans, he also did... Right, racist impersonation. There is a member of The Guardian watching this. I want Cancel Howie to go viral.
Yeah, we're going to do that hashtag. How dare you? It's not her, is it, Francis?
No, mate. Her OnlyFans is very successful.
OK.
She's earning millions.
What's odd about this is not just that he is doing this, but that he would admit this online.
Yeah.
Why would you say that?
Yeah,
I think it's anonymous.
Yeah,
no,
it is anonymous.
It is anonymous.
Okay.
But the fact that
the Fesshole Twitter...
Oh, OK, that's not his name.
The fact that you are admitting this online just shows to me that we need to bring back bullying. It needs to be stronger. We need shame. Yeah. We need shame. You can't go admitting this stuff. This is the stuff that you hold down and you never admit to anyone, apart from one night where it's not working out with the wife and it all comes out and then you deny it.
Well, that's it. What if his wife or partner looks at his bank statement and says, who is this? And then checks it out, finds out
it's an absolute...
looks at it and then it says, Mark.
And then he goes, and then it's my mum. See, I'm doing your punchlines for you, Josh.
You know what? This is exactly the kind of story that ends in tragedy.
It does, mate.
So I'm glad we started with the Oedipus reference.
Do you know my dad watches this show?
Does he?
Yeah.
Oh, dear.
Hello, Mr. Francis.
my dad is from Wigan, mate. He doesn't talk...
All right.
Do you even know what a Wigan accent is?
All right, mate.
Oh, that's hopeless. Right, let's continue with the theme of cultural degeneracy. This one from The Times. What's this?
So this is how to have a polyamorous relationship, Andrew, without heartbreak. And this is Annie. When she was 19, she realised she wasn't cut out for monogamy. The reason is, Annie, is because you're 19.
Yeah.
Right? And you should be going out and sowing your wild oats and behaving like a little so-and-so, so that when you get it out of your system and then you settle down into middle-class misery.
Well, she talks about how she attempted to decipher her feelings by reading a book. We can't say the title of the book because it would violate Ofcom, but let's call it the ethical slug. Let's call it that, but it's not that. It's some other word.
The ethical, promiscuous, overly promiscuous person.
Yes.
So we've got a photo there of, that's what... I thought it was me for a second.
Yeah.
But, no, I can see now it's someone else.
I think it's David Hay, apparently.
Yeah, it is.
OK. Fine.
So now... Polyamory. Josh, is it not the case that most people just, fancy more than one person in their life? And if you act on it, you're either cheating or you're polyamorous. And if you say you're polyamorous, then you get virtue points.
Well, I was going to say exactly that, because now, technically, they're part of the queer community.
So they're marginalised
they're LGBTQIA+, exactly.
Yeah.
Essentially because, they're heterosexual, though.
Right.
So
this is the point, is a lot of most now of the LGBTQIA plus community are straight.
Yeah.
Basically. Yeah. And that's really, really boring. You know, but the people who've identified themselves into an oppressed class, it's nonsense.
Do you know my favourite thing about all these flags is, do you know what colour the straight flag is?
I do.
Yeah.
It's beige.
Yeah.
It's beige, boring.
I thought it was grey, actually, but either isn't great.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're going to move on to this one. The Mail has this one about not only cultural decay, but also the rise of narcissistic entitlement. Josh?
Really? I think this is actually a really good story. The rise of the divorce registry, how newly single people are now sending loved ones' wish lists of essential items. So, what a great idea. Like, you break up, you run out, or, you know, I mean, hopefully that will never happen to me and whatever, but the point is you don't have all the essentials, you don't have sheets, you don't have
Because she
spoons.
took everything.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
And so this is a way of people saying, oh, how can I help you?
Yeah.
And you're saying, all right, well, could you go on here and put some money into this?
OK.
And I'll go to John Lewis and I'll sort myself out again.
Yeah.
Do you think this is a good idea, Francis?
Yeah, I do think it's a good idea. I think, you know, let's be honest, when there's a divorce, a lot of the time, men, we don't do as well in a divorce.
Is that right?
Yeah, that is a fact. And I'm a men's rights activist, mate. And it means that some blokes will be able to get themselves back on their feet and buy a new toaster.
OK, there we go. I think we've just got time for one more. This one is from Monday's Mail. Francis, what on earth is this?
So, yes, so this is about how, if you're uncomfortable, turns out it might actually be good for you. For squatting above the toilet seat, to not using a pillow, to following the Wim Hof technique of cold showers. And they're saying that although it might make you feel uncomfortable, it might be unpleasant, turns out you will live longer.
So it's better for us to have a little bit of discomfort in our lives, is that
Absolutely, absolutely.
Josh, you've got a lot of discomfort, so...
I do have a lot of... This 2003, Israeli researcher basically studied the angle which they went to the toilet. And if you know...
You don't need to demonstrate.
Mate, you don't...
You sure?
Yes.
OK, well, OK. But the
Mate,
point
just remember you've had the chocolates.
Get your knees above your hips. And then he proved that it took half the amount of time. Think of all the time that's going to save.
Well, another... No, don't, Josh. Sit down.
Mate.
Right, another great life hack from Josh Howie there. Listen, the show is nearly over now. Josh! Goodness sake. Right. Nearly over. We've got to take another look at the front covers of Monday's papers before we go. The Daily Mail has body found less than a mile from where she vanished. This is the ongoing Nicola Bulley investigation. The Telegraph, body found in search for missing Nicola. The Guardian has top scientists issue stark warnings on shattered healthcare workers. The Times, going with the Nicola Bulley story as well, body found a mile from where Bulley vanished. The Daily Star, this is an odd story. Brum's Rush. There's gold in them there Birmingham hills. Apparently there is gold to be found in Birmingham. That is all that we've got time for. I want to thank my wonderful guests, Josh Howie and Francis Foster. Tomorrow night, Simon Evans is going to be joined by Leo Kearse and Josh Howie again. Josh is sleeping here overnight. He has a bunk. And listen, if you are watching the 5 a.m. repeat of this show, please do stay tuned for the breakfast show, which is starting just after the break. Otherwise, we'll see you tomorrow at 11 o'clock for Headliners.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the people's channel and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
Is the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Hey!
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farrow.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
He's the king of breakfast TV, and he's back.
Eamon Holmes, back on the TV with me this morning.
Even remember my name.
I know, it's been 4 months. You have holy water by your bed?
Oh, yes. Already to bless.
Yeah. Oh, Eamon. Oh.
Why do you not believe anything I say?
Eamon Holmes back on GB News Breakfast at 6 a.m.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store? You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Good evening, I'm Tatiana Sanchez in the GB newsroom. Lancashire police are working to identify a body that was recovered from the River Wyre. It was located in the area where mother of two, Nicola Bully, disappeared more than 3 weeks ago. They're currently treating the death as unexplained and say her family has been informed of the latest development. The Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, has described the news as heartbreaking and distressing. Former Detective Chief Inspector Mike Neville says the post-mortem examination might not give us